A sudden silence filled the house that once echoed with laughter. The air felt heavy, carrying the weight of a loss too deep to express. He sat at the corner of the bed, staring at her photo, his hands trembling as he held the small locket she used to wear. It had been just a week since she left them. A heart attack had taken her away so suddenly that he still couldn't believe she was gone. Her laughter, her touch, and her presence, everything felt like a fading memory. Their 3 children, all too young to understand the magnitude of the loss, clung to him. "When is Mama coming back?" his youngest asked, her innocent eyes brimming with hope. He couldn't bring himself to answer, his throat tightening with pain. He simply pulled her into his arms, holding her close as if shielding her from the harsh truth. The house, once vibrant and warm, now felt cold and hollow. Each corner reminded him of her. The kitchen, where she'd hum her favorite tunes, now sat in eerie silence. Their bedroom, once a place of comfort, now felt like a room full of regrets. He hadn't even had the chance to say goodbye properly. That thought haunted him the most. At night, when the children were asleep, he would sit by the window staring at the stars. He believed one of them must be her, watching over them. Yet, the emptiness inside him grew deeper each day. He was torn between his responsibilities as a father and his grief as a husband. How could he manage it all? The thought of failing his children terrified him, but the thought of moving on without her seemed impossible. Grief had turned into a constant companion, but there was something else, something he couldn't quite explain. It felt like her presence still lingered in the house. At times, he thought he heard her voice, soft and reassuring, calling his name. It wasn't fear he felt, but a strange comfort, as if she hadn't completely left them. It was these moments that kept him going, believing she was still watching over him and their children. Days turned into weeks, but the burden on his shoulders only grew heavier. Each morning he woke up to the cries of his youngest, the stubborn silence of his middle child, and the quiet tears of his eldest. The weight of being both a father and a mother was overwhelming. He tried to cook their meals, get them ready for school, and listen to their stories, but nothing felt the same. His work suffered too. The long hours at the factory drained him, but he had no choice. He needed to provide for his children. Some nights he came home to find them asleep, their little faces stained with tears. His heart broke a little more each time, and he felt himself sinking deeper into despair. One evening, as he sat at the dinner table staring at the untouched food, his eldest daughter spoke up. "Papa, maybe you can marry someone else," she whispered, her voice hesitant and filled with fear. Her words hit him like a storm, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You're tired all the time," she continued, her eyes brimming with tears. "You don't smile anymore. Mama would want you to be happy, and for us to be okay." He couldn't respond. The thought of loving someone else felt like a betrayal. How could he replace the woman who had been his everything? He left the table abruptly, retreating to his room, where he sat in the dark, his head buried in his hands. That night, as he struggled to sleep, he had a vivid dream. He was back in the meadow where they used to take long walks, the sunlight warming their faces. She was there, looking as beautiful as ever, her smile filling his heart with warmth. "You're holding on to the pain," she said softly, reaching out to touch his face. "But you need to think about our children. They need you. And if someone else can give them the love and care I did, it's okay to let them in." When he woke up, her words lingered in his mind. It felt so real, as if she had truly been there, guiding him. But could he really make such a decision? Could he honor her memory while moving forward for the sake of their children? The days following that dream were filled with confusion and guilt. He couldn't shake her words, but he also couldn't accept them fully. Every time he thought of someone else taking her place, a wave of anger and sadness consumed him. Yet the sight of his children trying to manage without their mother was a painful reminder that something had to change. One evening, as he walked past her grave, he stopped and knelt down. The moonlight cast a soft glow over the gravestone, and the silence of the night felt heavy around him. "I don't know what to do," he whispered, his voice trembling. "How can I even think of moving on? How can I do this to you?" The wind rustled through the nearby trees, and for a moment he thought he heard her laughter, a faint echo from the past. He shook his head, dismissing it as his imagination, but a strange calmness washed over him, as if she were listening. That night, he dreamt of her again. This time they were in the kitchen where she had often cooked for the family, humming her favorite tune. She was stirring a pot on the stove, her movements gentle and familiar. When she turned to him, her eyes were filled with love. "You have to stop blaming yourself," she said, placing a hand on his. "I will always be a part of you and the children. But they need more than just memories. They need love and care in the present. If your heart finds someone who can give them that, don't be afraid to accept it." Her words stayed with him the next morning. It was as if she had given him her blessing, yet he still hesitated. He couldn't simply move forward without ensuring it was the right decision, for him, for his children, and for her memory. That evening he gathered the children around. "Do you miss Mama?" he asked softly, his voice breaking. They nodded silently, their eyes wide with sadness. His youngest crawled onto his lap, clutching his shirt. "I miss her hugs," she said, her voice barely a whisper. His eldest looked at him with quiet determination. "If marrying again means we'll be okay, then you should do it, Papa," she said, her words filled with a maturity that pained him. He looked at his children, their small faces filled with hope and grief, and realized he needed to find the strength to give them the life they deserved. But even then, he wondered, could he truly open his heart to someone new? Days turned into weeks, and he found himself at a crossroads. Every decision weighed heavily on him, and the thought of someone else stepping into his wife's place felt unbearable. Yet the children's growing needs couldn't be ignored. He wrestled with his emotions, spending countless nights at her grave, seeking answers in the stillness of the cemetery. One evening, as he sat beside the gravestone, lost in thought, he felt an overwhelming presence around him. It was as if the air itself was alive with her essence. The gentle rustling of leaves and the faint aroma of her favorite flowers filled the night. He looked around, but nothing seemed out of place, except the feeling that she was near. Suddenly a soft, almost ethereal voice broke the silence. "You have to let go of the pain for the children and for yourself." He froze, his heart pounding. The voice wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably hers. He looked at the gravestone, tears streaming down his face. "How can I?" he asked, his voice breaking. "You were my everything. How do I let go?" The voice seemed to echo in his mind, soothing yet firm. "You're not letting go of me. You're making room for love to grow again. The children need someone to hold their hands when you can't. And I'll always be here, watching over you." The words struck a chord deep within him. For the first time he felt a sliver of hope, a possibility that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It was a delicate balance of honoring her memory while embracing what life still had to offer. The next day, he decided to speak with a trusted family friend who had been a pillar of support since his wife's passing. Over a cup of tea, he poured out his heart, sharing his fears, his guilt, and the strange encounter at the grave. "You're not betraying her by considering this," the friend said gently. "Love isn't something that disappears. It grows, even in ways we don't expect. If she has given you her blessing, maybe it's time to take that step, for yourself and for your children." His heart was heavy with the weight of the decision, but her words stayed with him. Could it really be possible to love again while keeping her memory alive? The thought lingered, wrapping him in a mixture of grief and tentative hope. As days passed, he found himself revisiting the graveyard less frequently. The nights felt less heavy, and the children's laughter began to echo in the house once more. Yet the decision loomed over him, a shadow he couldn't ignore. He tried to distract himself by focusing on work and spending time with the children, but every quiet moment pulled him back to the graveyard and the words he had heard. One evening, after putting the children to bed, he sat down to write a letter to his late wife. Pouring his heart onto the page, he spoke of his struggles, his guilt, and his deep love for her. The words came easily, as if she were there beside him, listening to every thought. By the time he finished, his tears had smudged the ink, but his heart felt lighter. The next morning, he took the letter to her grave. The sun shone softly through the trees, and the cemetery seemed more peaceful than ever. He placed the letter beneath a small stone beside her gravestone, whispering, "I'll always love you no matter what, but I think I understand now." He stood there for a while, feeling a sense of closure he hadn't felt before. The air seemed warmer, and the heavy knot in his chest began to loosen. As he turned to leave, he noticed something unusual. A small patch of wildflowers had bloomed near the grave. He smiled faintly, taking it as a sign that she approved. In the following weeks, he started opening himself up to the idea of meeting someone new. It wasn't easy, and the guilt lingered, but he reminded himself of her words. Slowly, he began to take small steps toward building a new chapter for himself and the children. The children, too, seemed to notice the change in him. Their smiles grew brighter, and they began asking fewer questions about their mother. Instead, they filled their days with laughter, play, and the comfort of knowing their father was finally finding peace. One day, as he sat in the living room watching the children play, he felt a strange sense of gratitude. Though the loss still ached, he realized that love had not left him. It had transformed, guiding him to a new kind of hope. He whispered a silent thank you to her, feeling her presence as a gentle warmth in his heart. Several months passed, and life began to settle into a delicate rhythm. The children adapted to their new routines, and their father found solace in small moments. Morning giggles, bedtime stories, and the soft glow of hope returning to their lives. Yet, every so often he visited her grave, seeking comfort in the quiet presence of her memory. One crisp autumn evening, as the wind rustled the golden leaves, he stood at her grave once more. The wildflowers had multiplied, their vibrant colors contrasting against the cold gray stone. He spoke softly, as though she could hear him. "I've met someone," he confessed, his voice tinged with emotion. "She's kind to the children, and she understands the love I still hold for you. I hope you're happy with my decision." The air around him seemed to still, as if nature itself was pausing to listen. He closed his eyes and felt the faintest brush of warmth on his cheek, almost like a gentle kiss from the wind. Taking it as a sign, he left the graveyard with a lighter heart, ready to embrace the new chapter unfolding in his life. The woman he had met was compassionate and patient, understanding the complexities of his grief and his love for his late wife. She treated the children with warmth, slowly building trust and love in their young hearts. Though it took time, the family began to feel whole again, their home once more filled with laughter and light. On the night of his wedding to this new partner, he felt a mixture of joy and bittersweet sorrow. As he stood with her under the moonlit sky, he glanced upward and murmured, "Thank you." In that moment, a single star shone brightly, twinkling against the vast darkness. It felt like her blessing, a quiet reassurance that love could exist in many forms, and that she would always remain a part of his story. From that day forward, he lived with the understanding that love could evolve without fading, and grief could coexist with joy. Though he still visited her grave, it was no longer with a heavy heart. Instead, he carried her memory as a source of strength, knowing she had given him the courage to move forward. Together with his new partner and his children, he honored her by creating a life full of love, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. Years rolled by, and the family grew stronger with each passing day. The children, now older, held on to the memories of their mother with warmth in their hearts. They spoke of her often, cherishing the values she had instilled in them. Her legacy became the glue that bound them, even as they welcomed a new chapter with their stepmother, who had become a loving and integral part of their lives. The man, now grayer and wiser, never let go of the deep love he had for his first wife. He often told the children stories of their mother, her laughter, her dreams, and the sacrifices she made for them. His second wife, with her quiet strength, always encouraged these moments, knowing they were essential to the family's healing and growth. One day, as the family gathered at the grave, they planted a tree beside her resting place, a blossoming magnolia, symbolizing beauty, endurance, and renewal. As they worked together, Their laughter echoed through the cemetery, mingling with the rustling leaves. It was not a place of sorrow anymore, but a space of remembrance and love. Later that evening, the man sat alone by the grave, gazing at the tree now standing tall and proud. "You'd be proud of us," he whispered, his voice steady yet emotional. "We've kept our promise. We've lived, loved, and remembered." Just then, a soft breeze swept through, carrying the faintest scent of magnolias. He smiled, feeling her presence as strongly as ever. It was as if she were reminding him that life was meant to be embraced, even amid loss. The family left the graveyard hand in hand, the setting sun painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The man looked back one last time, his heart full of gratitude and peace. Though life had tested him, it had also taught him the true meaning of love, one that transcends time, loss, and even death. With his family by his side, he walked forward, cherishing both the past and the future, carrying her love as a guiding light for the rest of his days. The night deepened as the family returned home, their hearts lighter but their memories vivid. Life continued, but it was imbued with a new sense of gratitude. The children grew, their mother's love shaping their choices and character. Each milestone they achieved felt like a tribute to her enduring spirit. The man often found solace in quiet moments under the magnolia tree, his second wife joining him, their hands intertwined. Together they honored the past while nurturing the present. Their partnership was not just a bond of love, but one of resilience and understanding. One evening, as the family gathered around the table, the eldest child spoke up. "Mom would be so happy to see us like this," they said, their voice filled with emotion. Everyone nodded, a quiet agreement that their love had not only endured but expanded. They were stronger, more united, and deeply aware of the blessings they shared. In the following years, the tree blossomed with the seasons, its branches spreading wide and strong. It became a symbol of the family's journey, a reminder that love could take root, even amid loss, and grow into something beautiful. As the family thrived, they carried her memory with them, a quiet yet powerful force that guided their every step. The man, now older but content, often reflected on the journey they had taken. Life had not been easy, but it had been rich with meaning. His heart, though scarred by loss, was full of gratitude. He knew that love was not diminished by death, but transformed into something eternal, a legacy that would live on in the lives of those they held dear. And so, the story of a family bound by love and strengthened by loss came to its quiet, hopeful conclusion. The magnolia tree stood as a testament to their journey, its blossoms a reminder of the enduring power of love. Beautiful, resilient, and everlasting.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.